Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Indigenous Podcast, where we are going to talk about haciendas and encomiendas, but mostly encomiendas. So pretty much the issue with encomiendas that I think a lot of people don't understand was that it was a form of encomiendas were a form of slavery for Native American people, which goes back to Spain before 1492. It was a system of a medieval system where people that of lesser on the bottom of the class had to do a lot of work. Nobles, people that were below nobles, and it was forced work. So when the Spanish came to the Americas, particularly the Dominican Republic, Cuba, they brought these encomienda systems with them. And I don't think what people understand. For example, we had this comment from someone who said that natives were on the same level of treatment as other Spanish people, and that's slavery.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
really stupid comment.
yes, and that slavery was not that long. That
He said like 10 years. It only lasted 10 years.
yeah, 10 years, which could not be so far from the truth. One thing I want to add is that I don't think history books, especially Western history books, go into that much detail about Native American slavery that happened throughout the Americas. And I'm talking like from Argentina to Colorado, where the Spanish, I think that was their northernmost point, north part of California. Um, and essentially, I'll explain. Encomienda is maybe some of you have watched 12 Years a Slave, or I've seen pictures of slave plantations. They're essentially the same thing. When the Spanish conquistadors came to the Americas, they set up this system of they're given this plot of land, and they're given all these natives that were already living there to work as free labor. So the natives had to gather crops, do all sorts of things that they obviously didn't want to do because it was against their will. Now, there were a set of laws that were enacted from the crown in Spain to abolish slavery in I believe 15 somewhere in the mid 1500s. But again, that didn't matter because the conquistadors were still thousands of miles away from Spain. So these encomiendas still continued until the late 1700s. That's almost 200 years of forced labor for Native people. And not
And
only
I want to also interject here a little bit because I've heard this comment, not maybe not on our channel, but it's on Facebook. It's always there, where whenever we bring up the Black identity point, like how Black people, even if they're mixed or whatever, they say that they're Black. Whenever we bring up that point, one common rebuttal I see, which I think is nonsensical, is, well, our history was different from African Americans. So therefore, because it was different somehow, my like wishful thinking type of brain, we need to acknowledge our mixture. And it's just like, no, we have way more similarities to African Americans. And in some respects, we have a worse history because, again, certain groups were subject to genocide, especially the northern natives, but uh, some groups south of the border too, my tribe included, was subjected to genocide at the hands of the Spanish. But again, 200 years of slavery, like Marcus just mentioned. So it's like we have way more similarities history-wise with African Americans than we have differences. So like this whole point of like, oh, the history is different, so therefore, oh yeah, you can't identify as one race. That's extremely stupid. And it's like you need to do more research and just get educated on that because you're just speaking from ignorance.
yeah, I agree, Juan. Um, and just the problem that people believe that natives were not slaves, because I think at least in the American education system, we're taught about the Trail of Tears, about how we eliminated a lot of Native Americans in the United States. All very true, but we don't talk about slavery that did happen in Colorado, that did happen in Florida. The northern parts of Spanish expansion settlement. And not only was it the conquistadors that did this, there were just regular old, nerd, I mean, I guess you call them losers from Spain that came over, settlers that came to the Americas that were also, they had a significant amount of money and they were also given land and natives to conquer and, do all this work for them. So it was really terrible. Now, That was the goal of Spain, of the crown, was to make sure that, you know, natives were obedient, to make sure they do all this work for them. So it was just a lot of terrible things. So I would say that the plantation, I would say it's a American slave plantation on steroids, because so many natives died. The Encomienda system was a major contributing factor to the genocide of Native American people throughout the entire Americas. I know a lot of people will say, yeah, the disease, smallpox, all these things, but people do not take into account how bad the Encomienda system, and also haciendas, which is like a large estate. It's very similar to Encomienda, but, you know, forced labor, one Spaniard controlling all this land, and, you know, there's just so many bad things. And I will take into account that there were maybe a few natives that, for example, to the Texlocans, that maybe were given some land also to own, but that was very few. The majority, if not like 90% of natives, suffered under this Encomienda system. And it was just, you know, work till you die. It was very sad. And I think a lot of people believe that that wasn't the case. That natives, you know, lived freely, were given their own land, and that everything was fine. So we're going to show you a video where a few folks talk about the Encomienda system, and we're just going to point out a few flaws of the video itself. So we're going to go ahead and start that. Unless you were going to say something, Juan. Where you go?
Oh, no. I was just going to say, we're going to let it run for about a minute each time, and then we're going to give our take on the video, just to kind of make it more streamlined, like as far as our video here, our reaction.
Yep. So
Hi, Kim.
Hey, Becca. So what are we talking about today?
Today we're going to be talking about how a racial hierarchy was established in the early Americas, about the Encomienda system, the early Atlantic slave trade, and how such an arbitrary factor as race became a way that our society was organized, and we still feel the effects of that today.
Okay, interesting.
So to begin, we'll talk about the Encomienda system. So the Encomienda system was this dependency relation system that started in Spain and was brought to the Americas to control the labor system. Encomienda, that actually means entrust in Spanish. Spaniards that were entrusted with dividing up the labor within the Native American populations. So different encomenderos, those were Spanish men that were sent to the colonies, were entrusted with dividing up the labor between different Native American groups.
Okay, so this to me, it sounds a little bit like a feudal system.
Yeah.
Am I getting this right?
Definitely.
So the feudal system was this earlier European medieval system where there'd be a lord who would have the responsibility of protecting serfs. And in response, he'd get their labor and a part of their wealth.
So this sounds a lot like the encomenderos and the Native Americans that were in his jurisdiction.
Okay.
So the encomenderos would offer the Native Americans in their colony protection.
Okay.
And they would also offer them Catholicism. They were under this kind of God, gold, and glory motivation.
I think I've heard of that before.
Yeah, so God, gold, and glory were some of the reasons that colonists wanted to come to the New World, and they really wanted to inspire and promote Catholicism abroad. And they really wanted to increase the practice amongst the native people.
Yeah, I think, one of the things that we have to understand about this time period is how religiously motivated many people were. I mean, when it comes down to it, gold is going to be more of a motivator than religion. But, they saw their role as Christians, as Catholics, as trying to convert the entire world.
Right. And in return, the encomenderos expected from the native people a lot of labor. So the natives had much better understanding of the land itself that they were aiming to cultivate. At the time period in the 1500s, the Spaniards, the Portuguese, the Dutch, the English, everyone's coming over and wanting to create new markets, especially with tobacco, sugar, and the Native Americans under the Encomienda system were expected to help the encomenderos produce at a really high rate in which they could send these goods back to Europe.
And I think it's worthwhile to note here that we're saying, oh, they wanted the labor of the Native Americans. Well, why didn't the Spanish just send their own people to process sugar, to grow tobacco up in the New World? And there were a couple of reasons for that.
I'm going to stop right there for one reason, as for the protection of Native people. That's completely false. The natives living on these plots of land were forcibly moved there, not only for Catholicism, forced work, as these people say, for natural resources, tobacco, but the Spaniards forced natives to be on this land, and it really wasn't for protection, because before the Spaniards came, the natives were living, amongst themselves.
Right, like what protection? Like what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like they're just living like normal people before these fuckers show up, and like protection, really, and they make it. I'm also noticing they're not really mentioning like that they were forced. They're not mentioning this was like slavery. They're making it seem like it was a synergetic relationship where both parties were happy and both parties benefited equally. And it's like, what the hell are you even saying? Like they don't speak of this as if it was even a negative thing. Like they even have positive tones talking about this. Like, oh, it was so cute. It was so cool.
Mm-hmm. Oh, they don't mention, yeah, they don't mention the fact that if the natives, didn't want to put in too much work, or they didn't want to put that much work in, and they lose their hands, their legs, just all these terrible things that would happen to them if they decided they didn't want to be on this encomienda anymore. They didn't want to be on this land. So I think these two folks fail to take that into account.
Yeah, or what about protection for newlyweds? Where the Spanish would go try to rape the bride, because he thought that he just owned them like fucking property. So it's like, where the fuck's the protection for the bride? For the native women, where the hell's the protection?
See, the Spaniards didn't look at natives as human beings. They looked at them as lesser, I think even below animals. So they believed they could do whatever they want. And again, laws were set in place, but no one obeyed that law. Maybe a few Spaniards did, but I'm not willing to bet my money that most of them did that. Again, so native slavery did last at least over 200 years.
Right.
And this is a major flaw, I think, in American Western history books. So we're doing our best part here to educate you all. And just to let you guys know, you can search up, encomiendas through YouTube, and you probably won't find two native guys talking about it. So this is probably the best video you guys can find so far. That are from the perspective of two native people.
Oh, and before people in the comments already start, because I can already see, like, people like to straw man arguments, like pretend like we're saying something else when we clearly did. I can already see one, like, oh, so you're saying all natives were enslaved? No, we're not saying all of them were enslaved, but a lot of them were fucking enslaved, and that lasted again for like a long time, for like 2 centuries. When you think about it, if it ended in like 1791, 1792, and there were still people enslaved at that time in different parts of the Western Hemisphere, then think about that. That's only about 75 to 80 years before African Americans were freed in the United States. So, I mean, again, the history between our peoples differs some, but I think you would find way more similarities, like I mentioned earlier, than you would find differences. So this whole oh, you're not proud of the Spanish side, oh, you're rejecting one side of your heritage, it's like it applies equally to us like how it applies to African Americans, because again, on average, they're mixed European too. They got about 24% on average, bro. Like that's almost a fourth. So again, that's another reason why we're doing this, because a lot of people don't realize all of this, and they say all these stupid comments and it just pisses us off, quite frankly. So that's another reason why we're here.
Yeah, exactly. And let me tell a little bit of history through South America. There was also a similar system to Encomienda. I don't remember the exact name, but especially throughout the rainforest, the Spaniards would force natives to build these, small cities. And what they would do is that they would put a church in the middle of this small little town, and then they would go out and bring in as many natives as they can throughout the rainforest, or the Amazon rainforest, to bring them in and say that they'd be protecting them, Christianizing them, making sure that they're going to become Catholic like them. And again, it's all through force. The natives, if they wanted to escape Spaniards or whatever natives are working for them, would go out and hunt them down and bring them back, and they'd suffer, terrible consequences. So this belief that Native American people, even in the Amazon rainforest, are fine, it's not. And of course, these people don't take that into account as well, of the different types of horrible treatment that Native American people suffered amongst the Spanish and their lapdogs, we'll call them.
Oh, for sure. And like one thing is, like, this isn't going to be one video and it's over with. I think we're like, a lot of people just don't realize how much the Spanish were like complete and utter bastards, and we're going to make that apparent in future videos too. This isn't the only one, because a lot of people like to act like they were really good people that had our best interests at heart, and that is completely fucking false.
Yeah, I can't for the rest of me, I cannot be proud of a group of people that really wanted me dead, or didn't think of me as, thought of me less than an animal. So I'm very proud, to be Native American. So just to let all the haters know out there.
Yeah, that's right.
We're gonna start.
One is that they kind of knew that the New World was more or less a death trap. It wouldn't be until the mid 1600s that a lot of these places had a survival rate for settlers above 50%. So a lot of whites in Europe wanted to avoid that. They also didn't really see these plantations as being something they needed to work directly. They kind of thought, I would rather stay in the courts of Europe. I would rather be a lord. Many in England later, there'll be many members of parliament who own plantations in the West Indies, and they've never even been to those plantations, but they're sure profiting.
Yeah, I think that's definitely right. And when the Encomienda system was more officially instated with Nicolas de Ovando in 1502, that was the first official Encomienda system in the West Indies, he actually took over after Columbus was ousted from his role in San Salvador.
Why was Columbus ousted?
He was a really bad leader. Ovando really took over the Encomienda system, and then it started to look a lot more like what we would call slavery. So slowly, the Encomienda...
Yeah, so again, I will stop this uneducated person again, to talk about slavery amongst Native American people.
Wait, so what word did she say? It started becoming like what? Because her audio quality is so bad, I couldn't even make that out.
Sure. She said that when official encomiendas started when Nicolas Ovando became governor and came into the Americas, I think in the Dominican Republic or Cuba, one of those two places. And that's when things started to look more like slavery. Oh, that is so wrong, because Christopher Columbus came here with his mind on enslaving people. That was the whole goal, was to get as many slaves as possible to pretty much fund their gigantic empire.
He enslaved tons of Native people. I don't know what they're talking about. Like, it was slavery from the very beginning. Like,
they literally caught natives and sent them back to Spain to be slaves. That's what Christopher Columbus and the groups. I have a book somewhere in this room where it talks about in great detail how the Native Americans were captured, put on a boat. Some committed suicide. Some didn't survive to make it to Spain. They died from disease, scurvy, I don't know, but certain diseases, on the ship. So very few at that brief period made it to Spain and survived, but thousands were shipped over to Spain to work as slaves. So for her to say that is very, very arrogant. And she obviously doesn't know what she's talking about. So
Dude, I can't with the lighthearted tone, bro. Like, I can't get over that shit, man.
The lighthearted tone. Oh yeah, the laughing.
Yeah, like, let's continue this bullshit.
Encomenderos would no longer offer the Native Americans protection, but instead threatened them if they did not reach their quota.
Okay, so instead of protection, they get threats.
And oftentimes that turned into extreme punishment or death. And they were forced to do extremely hard labor. So sowing a sugar plantation is not easy work. And so they expected extreme amounts of hard labor in the hot sun.
Yeah, processing sugar is like a 24-hour-a-day kind of deal. And it is, I think, perhaps the worst kind of labor you could do.
And they weren't just trying to promote Catholicism, but also stripping Native Americans of their culture and of their religious practices.
So Catholicism not optional.
Catholicism was not something they were offering, it was something they were instituting with force. So as more conquistadores come over...
Give them props for that.
Yeah, they bring up that part with the force, the Catholicism.
Right, because like, a lot of these like Spanish, like, munchers, they'll say, oh, clash of two cultures and like the perfect blend, like it's like this beautiful fucking bullshit. Like it was like, oh, like it was harmonious, it was meant to be, like, and it's just like, okay, at least they're getting that right, that it wasn't like that at all. So
well, a lot of Western scholars like to romanticize our history and believe that, we were all in this system of everyone loved everybody, that this was all meant to be. But obviously that was not the case. Some sort of cosmic way of, oh God, it just really pisses me off.
Yeah, dude, and especially because, like I said, me and Marcus have just run into so many people that argue with us on Facebook that have said stupid shit like this all the time, and it's just like, dude, like it's like we haven't had people like present like really good logical arguments that refute what we have to say or everything we have to say. It's always like blatantly false statements born of ignorance or like wanting to fairy tale-ize like history. And that's what makes it even more infuriating, because it's like it's blatantly false, and it's like, bro, why are you saying what you're saying? Like
Pocahontas.
Yeah, like Pocahontas, or just like this, like I said, the whole fairy tale thing in general. Like, oh, the Spanish arrived and the natives thought that they were gods and like loved them, and it was so beautiful, and they were so fucking perfect together, like perfect blend. Like, that's like a fairy tale version of all that shit, dude.
It pretty much is, and I don't think it's talked about that much. Like even Spain, the president of Mexico asked for an apology, Spain, for what everything that was done, and Spain said no.
Yeah, I did read that some people in Spain agreed with the Mexican president that they should have apologized, but a bunch of the conservatives in Spain, they fucking stuck their nose in the air, and they're like, no, we're too good to apologize, and like, why should we apologize for anything? We didn't do anything wrong. And it's just like, wow, it's like 500 years, you guys still don't see how you were fucked up. It's insane.
But like, look at all the stolen artifacts you took from us and that are in your Spanish museums. How about you give that back? And then you'll say that nothing was wrong. Anyway, but we're gonna
over to the West Indies. Some notice this does look like slavery, and we are not treating the Native American people with dignity or really as humans at all. Bartolome de las Casas was an encomendero, but in kind of the mid-1500s, he came over to actually see his encomiendas in practice and realized the inhumane treatment and abuse the encomienda system promoted. He released his encomienda and started to dedicate his life to petitioning and lobbying the King of Spain, Charles V, to institute new laws that would protect Native Americans against these abusive practices.
Yeah, when you're looking around this time period for a good person in this system, Bartolome de las Casas is pretty much the only one.
Yeah, he was a good dude amongst a lot of not so good dudes.
No, he was not. When the word they call him, Encomiendero, he still practiced that. He was still in the Americas, and he was still okay with that until he realized after some portion of time that maybe this wasn't such a good idea. So he still partook in the slavery of Native people, extermination, genocide, everything else. On top of that, I don't know if I'd call someone a good dude when he okayed for Black slaves to come to the Americas instead. Yes, he tried his best to, make life better for Native American people. But they obviously needed some sort of labor, more labor, because more of us kept on dying. So it's like, oh, okay, we'll just bring Black, Africans here to do our work instead. Because we kept on dying from disease and these stupid encomienda systems that kept on killing us, or causing our deaths. So I don't know if I'd call this particular person a good.
Right. I would just say like you have a massive piece of shit and you have like a wet piece of shit. He's more like a wet piece of shit, I guess. Like he's less shitty, but still pretty shitty.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. Yeah, still less shitty. And again, they say that, these laws are put in place, but it did nothing. It really didn't. The encomienda still continued. Spaniards.
Yeah, especially because again, you got to realize like the distance from Spain and down here, and the conquistadors always had a history, and like the people there always had a history of saying fuck Spain and we're gonna do what we want to do our way. And so it's like, did it really have that big of effect? And then the whole like bleeding heart thing is like, if he had such a bleeding heart, why would he not just be like, okay, you know what, you're all free, go away? Didn't do that. So spare me the whole bleeding heart. Like, it might have helped some, like, I guess that's good, but like let's not pretend like the guy was a saint just because he it's tugged on his heartstrings a little bit and he was a little more human than the other fuckers that were there. When
he finally realized, maybe enslaving people isn't a great idea, or enslaving this certain race of people isn't a good idea. Oh, I know. There's people in Africa like good slaves to come. So that's why you see Cuba, the Dominican Republic, Haiti, why
Puerto Rico,
or Puerto Rico. There's a lot of Africans there, a lot of mixed Black people there, is because those were the first chain of islands that the Spanish thought was a good idea for them to come to. So that's why you see so many. Now, of course, there was Haiti became a colony of France. For I think, I'm not sure the exact reason. We could go make another video about that later. But that is why you see so many in Central America in particular, and throughout South America as well. There's certain populations, I think, in Venezuela and Colombia, and obviously Brazil, but that's Portuguese, and it's for another time. So we're gonna finish this video up here and see what these lovely ladies have to say.
And so in 1542, new laws, they were literally called the New Laws, were passed by Charles V. And these laws didn't outlaw the encomienda system, but aimed to put some regulation on these inhumane practices. The encomienda system wouldn't be outlawed completely until 1720.
Oh, wow.
So the effects of the encomienda system were already really being felt at this time and contributed to the formation of this arbitrary racial hierarchy that we will continue to talk about in the next video.
Oh, good. Well, they were kind of there. They almost got it.
Yeah, almost got it.
Laughing really didn't help.
Fucking laughing. Yeah, it didn't fucking help the subject matter, yo. Like, come on.
Genocide's funny.
Yeah. Oh, dude, I bet you, even though they're saying they're Native Americans and like in command, I bet you if you went up to them and said, hey, yeah, me and Marcus are Native Americans, like he's from Peru and I'm from Mexico, and they would try to argue and say, no, you're Latino, even though they're literally saying that they're Native Americans. Dude, I'm saying, like, it's so stupid. People are so brainwashed. They don't use logic. They don't connect the dots. It's insane, man. It is insane.
Or if they were from Central and South America, like, no, you're a mestizo.
Yeah, they would say some stupid shit like that. It's like, oh my God.
Or you're Hispanic or something. You're mixed. You can't contribute to this conversation.
Right, dude. They could literally take somebody from somebody from a northern tribe that has like 25% native blood, and they'd be like, "Oh, he's Native American," and then they would look at me and I'm 50, and be like, "Oh, you're mestizo. You're not actually native. You're not native at all." And it's be like, "What the fuck? Like, what misfirings go through your brain that cause you to like say stupid shit like that?" But
Oh wait, no, but there's lighter people that look lighter than us in the United States, but they can be native because they have connection to tribes. Okay, we can't. Like, get out of here with that.
right, like,
that's getting very, very annoying.
yeah, that thing is.
There's people that still do that. For example, we have a what will we call this certain person? We'll call him Gus, and Gus continues to say that, even though we are Native Americans, we don't have a tribe. He thinks that we're trying to be culture vultures and trying to take over and speak over Native people. No, that's not what we want to do, guys.
Right, and he thinks that we like threaten the sovereignty of one of his tribe over here. Well, I'll go ahead and say this tribe's in the U.S., right, the continental U.S. He thinks somehow us saying we're native threatens his tribe up there, and it's just like, look, bro, like, your tribe and the U.S. government, whatever contract you guys have, whatever treaty, has nothing to fucking do with us. And us saying that we're native has literally zero impact on that. Like, that's the business between your tribe and the U.S. government. And it's like, and we don't have to have a tribe to be a race of people. Like, let's cut the BS here. Like, it's just a bunch of word salad that comes out of his mouth. To be honest.
And like, so what are you going to call us? You're going to call us mestizos? Okay, then who's the one that's colonized here? The one that wants to use the word made from Spaniards, or us? So
yeah, so it's just like, it's just stupid crap. Like I said, we've run into our fair share of like little haters, and it gets exhausting to deal with like these people, because again, like, and I'm not saying it to be like, oh, me and Marcus are like invulnerable, oh, we're so badass, but it's like, I haven't run into people that literally present really good logical arguments, in my opinion, as to why we're not Native American, when we literally like, we're literally 50% or more. Marcus is like 70%. Like, so it's like, like, it's like, I'm straight up 50. I got my tribe. Like, but even if I didn't, like, it wouldn't take anything away from that fact. Like, we're people of color. We're Native Americans. Like, that's the blood. That's the blood that's running through our veins. So it just mind boggles me, man. Like, the amount of arguing over something that's extremely simple, in my opinion.
And I wanted to get one other point, and we are well aware that not everyone in Mexico is native. Of course, like, they're there. So I think people have this misconception that we're saying everyone.
Yeah, because I've seen some people like say on our channel, they're like, oh, not everybody in Mexico is Native American, not everybody in this country is Native American. It's like, no, but we're saying like a really high, the mass bulk of them are, because in my opinion, and I don't know at what cutoff to say somebody's not native, all right? That's kind of not for me to call, okay? I'm not a king, I'm not an authority on that. But what I will say with all my heart is, if you are close to half, you're not even half, right? But let's say you're like 40% native, 50% European. In my eyes, you're still Native American. If it's close to half, within 10 to 15 points, in my opinion, I feel like it shouldn't really be a debate, because you probably look the part too. So it's just like, that's just my opinion. I don't think it should be a discussion. Like, all the mestizos that you guys talk about, like the half and half, on all that crap, like people that are slightly more European, like, it's like, no, it shouldn't be a debate. They're all Native American, in my opinion. So you count them in, and yeah, basically all of Mexico is Native American.
Pretty much. But just a little overview real quick. So we talked about in the beginning, encomiendas, people saying that we're all treated equally for a very long time. No, that's not true. Even in the independence movements, when they started, it still was Native people suffering a lot, if not more, because of more advanced weaponry, immigration of European settlers bringing more in, whitening the population, as we've talked about before. But the point of the encomiendas is that it was a form of slavery. It lasted until the late 1700s, late 1700s. and it was much longer than what people like to say. And it was a large factor in why so many natives died, forced labor. And it's sad, but we're doing what we can to bring some light onto this at least not very discussed topic throughout at least American history, and probably through many other countries as well. So we hope we've opened some of your eyes today, and you all have learned something new. So for Sunday night, I think that you guys can take something in and realize that maybe you were wrong about a certain thing, and Marcus and Juan helped you. So you're welcome.
And maybe, just maybe, we won't. Maybe, just maybe, we won't get hate in the comments. But I
we
already
probably
know.
will.
Yeah, we will. I already know. They're not even going to watch the whole video. They're going to literally repeat some of the arguments we just refuted in the video. They're just going to repeat it down the comment. I swear to God, it happens every time.
Probably. Well, there's probably someone already typing right away as soon as we put that in there.
Yeah, pretty much, man.
But thank you guys for watching. We look forward to educating you guys as much as we can, bringing in cool people, and
oh yeah, we got a huge lineup of people we're bringing in, guys. Sometimes your life gets in the way, so sometimes we got to wait until we get a guest on. Also the guest has to be available to be on, but we have a huge lineup. And while we would love to tackle every single type of topic on this channel, we don't have 300,000 subs. We don't make a living from this, so it's in our free time. So just want to throw that out there.
So we do our best, but we will get our folks on, our beloved folks.
Yeah. All right, man. Thank you guys for watching again. To the haters, I hate you guys too, but thanks. We'll see you the next time.
Juan and Juan Cholo Marcus signing off. Goodbye.